All right, time to look at U.S. government bond rates and U.S. government interest expenses. This is some work I've recently been doing to try to think about what's going to happen with interest rates. The name of this particular research I call U.S. Government Can't Afford Interest Rise or Rate Rise. But before we get into that, first of all, if you've got any questions or any comments, feel free to put them in the chat now. Yesterday we talked about crypto. I had a lot of good comments and discussion about that, and I'll continue to look at that, and I think maybe over the next couple of days we'll do more on that. But feel free to ask your question now. Before we start, let's just look at the news of the day. I thought this was an interesting one. Asia Pacific stocks mostly rise. China announces new anti-monopoly rules aimed at tech giants. Hey, that's exactly what a lot of conservatives in America are saying that they want to do, is target the tech giants. A big question really is does the Biden administration target the tech companies? On the one hand, they've talked about breaking up monopolies, but on the other hand, I think you can argue, and we've seen it now, Time Magazine has come out with an article that talks about the pressure that the anti-Trump group put on social media companies to try to get them to help with the vote, shall we say. Now, let's talk about this for a moment. So lack of regulation has led to monopolistic behavior and unfair competition in China. That's the claim. E-commerce sites literally forced sellers to use all their services, including payment solutions, or to choose another platform. So we're talking about Alibaba, Taobao, Ant Group's Alipay, and Tencent's WeChat. So the government is putting pressure on these guys. These new anti-monopoly guidelines threaten China's big tech companies. In a recent announcement, Chinese state administration declared to set new rules regarding e-commerce providers. The new policy also aims to prohibit price fixing and collusion among competitors. So I think this is an interesting article, and why I think it's interesting too is because it's the challenge that the U.S. companies, that the U.S. government is under right now, and to see China make a move on this is fascinating. Now, of course, I think that you have the potential that these companies are threatening the power, the central power of the central government of China, and they don't like that kind of power. In fact, nobody does that has power. They don't want to give it up. In the case of the U.S. government, it's a little bit of a different thing, but I would say the complaint about tech companies is coming mainly from conservatives, and since conservatives don't control the government, it's possible we don't get much action there. But we do have also, between Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and some others have talked about breaking up the tech monopolies. So there's still pressure, and I think tech companies are at risk in my perspective. Now, this is the next part of what I've been looking at. Inflation expectations and interest rates. What does it mean for the U.S. government? I've got 4 charts I'm going to walk you through. The first chart is just looking at short-term interest rates and how low they still remain. They're basically at 0%. This is 3-month rates, and this could lead to an inflation overshooting in the medium term. So right now, they're going to keep that rate down there for a while, and inflation may start to rise significantly. In fact, we can already see that higher inflation expectations are starting to be reflected in the longer-term rate. Now, this is a 10-year government bond rate. So let's go back. This is 3-month rate over the same period, and here's a 10-month rate over the same period. So we've just bounced off about 1% on the 10-year bonds, and we're starting to rise from there. So now the next thing I just want to look at for a moment is the yield curve. The steepness of the yield curve right now, the green line, is massive, meaning interest rates are super low in the short run, and they're longer in the long run. But the truth is that really long run rates are still very, very low. So where it becomes interesting is when we then plot the interest rates, the interest expenses that the U.S. government is paying. So right here we can see that the U.S. government is paying about 900 billion in interest expenses. And what's interesting about this is that interest costs, now I use a 1-year government bond rate here, which is using the right-hand scale. That's the blue line. I use 1 year as kind of an approximation of the average maturity of all of the U.S. government's debt. But I think the bullet point that I put down at the bottom right of this is the one that really is the most significant, and that is a doubling of interest rate could cause interest expense to become 20% of government spending compared to the current 10%. So basically, we have a massive buildup in debt, and The issue is that as long as interest rates are low, no problem. This poses a huge problem for the government. So what is the key points? Well, China takes initiative in reducing big tech power, number one. The Fed's efforts to stimulate the economy is likely to result in inflation, overshooting, and higher rate pressure. And we're already seeing that rate rise. This unanticipated inflation combined with high accumulated debt constrains the US government in the long run. And the bottom line, massive US government borrowing will be crushing when rates rise. Expect possibly rate controls to prevent rates from rising and pressure on the US dollar. Those are the bottom line conclusions. Before we go, let me just highlight, for those people looking to land their dream job in finance or become a better investor, check out the Valuation Masterclass. In the Valuation Masterclass, basically, it's a boot camp for valuation. It's everything I've ever learned, and I teach everything I know about valuation in there. You can check it out there. Now let's go to some chat and see if we have any questions and any comments. Okay, nothing coming in right now, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. And I hope that you have a great day. And let me know what you think about U.S. government debt and interest costs.